first of all, the development of Sufism, which is considered the mystical approach to Islam.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the Ismailis. And the Ismailis are basically a Gnostic version of Islam. They're a sect, a very, very marginal sect, but they are very significant in occult history because out of the Ismailis came the assassins. So it's supposedly from the assassins, it's a historical fact that the Templars had contact with the assassins.
Yes.
More speculative.
I don't know if we talked about the assassins last time, but give us a little bit of background information because that is a very fascinating group that seems to have influenced a lot both when it comes to the West and the East actually.
Absolutely, because to jump ahead, I'll go back, but just to point to the relevance of this is that the modern day terrorists are understood esoterically as being the modern representatives of the assassins. Mm-hmm. So the assassins were an order that grew out of the Ismaili movement. They were headed by a character named Hassani Sabah, and they were basically the first terrorists. They're called assassins because they used hashish as a method of mind control, and so they were called hashishim, or referring to their use of hashish, or eaters of hashish. Yes. And that's the origin of our word assassin. According to Marco Polo, he described that they would intoxicate these guys, and then they would create some kind of semblance of some ideal paradise. They would wake these guys up in their intoxicated state, and they would be able to enjoy every pleasure, women and wine and whatever, and then they would, after they went back to sleep, they would be told that they had seen heaven, and that if they obeyed the leader, that they would go back, that he would show them how to re-enter heaven, and if he died for them, that he would re-enter heaven.
This is a very early form of mind control, I would say.
There's no doubt about it. You know, people wonder about the use of marijuana for mind control purposes. It seems to be the opposite, but that was definitely the first instance, and it's not an accident, and it's basically a large part of the reason for this affiliation with the legend of the assassins is for their early mind control techniques.
But weren't these guys also kind of like mercenaries? They could be by the right king in the region or leader that had the amount of money to pay the head guy of the assassins. They could basically rent these guys in order to pick out a guy from the other tribe or something like that. Isn't that right?
That's exactly it. So they were the first mind control assassins. And another very important point was the indoctrination process that the assassins went through. That when they were first, I guess usually they were probably Ismailis at the beginning, but when a recruit entered the lowest ranks, he was everything was still Islam. You know, everything was still the fundamental basics of Islam, but he thought he was entering some order, presumably to advance his knowledge in the religion and serve his religion and so on and so forth. But as they had several grades, and I can't remember if it was like 7 or 8 or 9. And as the recruit moved up the ranks, then he was required to change his understanding of Islam. So in the first rank, he would say maybe it would be that it's not Ismaili Islam that's right, it's some particular scholar that's right. And then he would move up to another stage, and then it would be certain other rules are for the low people, and this is the true way to practice Islam, and slowly move up to a point where he would actually eventually reject Islam entirely and accept, this Gnostic occult doctrine as the true religion. Mm-hmm. This is very important. Because this is the key, right? You're looking at a guy who basically starts out as a Muslim fanatic, who ends up behaving as a terrorist and posing as a Muslim, but really following some secret occult doctrine. And that very much explains what's happening in the 20th century.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've heard also that the Knights Templar, for instance, were down in the region at that time, potentially learned this knowledge as well on how to use mind control or even drugs in that sense in order to get people under their spell, as it were. Do you think that's the case? That the knowledge was brought into the West as well?
The knowledge was much more than that. The knowledge was Kabbalah. I believe what happened is the Templars discovered texts because the Templars conducted they conducted excavations beneath the temple, and I believe that they discovered texts that had been buried there, and that's the
what
real
kind of
source.
Text? Do you know what kind of text?
Just early Kabbalistic texts from that would have dated back from the 1st century AD, because even the Kabbalists at the time claimed that they had received the book. It's called the Sefer HaBahir, and that's the book that represents the emergence of the Kabbalah, and the Kabbalists of the time claimed that it arrived to them from Palestine by way of Germany in bits, in fragments, like basically tattered bits and fragments.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that this is that they discovered books, and this explains why the doctrines basically had disappeared for 1,200 years practically before they reemerged by way of the Templars. So you're looking at a whole scheme of ideas that emerged out of this, and it's out of that the Zohar was compiled. And so I'm not sure of the role of mind control, but it's definitely the legend was definitely revived in modern times to support that idea. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure to what extent it actually served in that period, but also the use of intoxicants for occult purposes is at the core of this occult history, right? I mean, you go as far back as the Dying God cult begins, and you will always find that it's always the same. It involves music and intoxication and sex.
Well, there is an interesting idea about if you go back even to Eleusis, for instance, their idea of the rye, or a form of wheat, I think it is, that has potentially had at the time the fungi ergot on it, which means that the mysteries of the whole spiel that they had there was in some way involved with the drugs. So it's very interesting if that is the background case of that,
Sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the basis of it, and it's largely through this modern revival of this assassin legend that concept came about, and we can get back to that later. And it's through association with the Muslim Brotherhood. But
do you consider then that all this kind of mysticism going into other realms or something like this, all is if we want to term it that, evil or bad, or do you think that something good can come out of it, of self-exploration or seeking what the human being is with the aid of natural means that exist on the planet?
I'm not sure, because I never experienced anything like that. I'm not sure what it is. Like, I don't know what astral projection is, things like that. So, I just think that truth is a lot simpler than that, and that it's not something that you achieve through rituals and drugs and that sort of thing.
All right. So what you're talking about here mainly then is a form of emergence of a monoculture that potentially was the agenda of the day at that time to both I guess then break down both the Islam or the Muslim world, but also I guess the Christian, all religions. Okay, so what's the plan here? Do you think is this all about creating a new religion and a new age era? Is that the point here, or what do you see this is going?
Yes. It's about implementing the Kabbalah as the world religion.
Hmm. And you mentioned before the idea of, sorry to interrupt you, but you mentioned before the idea, for instance, of the clash of civilizations, and you tie this back to Jamal Afghani, I think you mentioned.
That's right.
And so,
you see what, go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to mention that. Do you think that this is the method that they've used in order to break down all what was previously, in order to because there has been a clear dialectic here, so to speak, and many wars between Muslim and the Christian Western world. But the only necessary way for them in their own philosophy to merge these two is to come up with a synthesis of these two, and in this case, it's a form of Gnostic mysticism. Is that what you're saying?
I think that the Gnostic mysticism is a process to undermine it, to eventually replace it. Like, I don't think they're going to come out with a, they want the world to accept Kabbalah basically unsullied. It's not going to be accepting Sufism or Gnosticism or anything like that. It's not, but the Gnosticism is a process of indoctrination, just like the assassins. It's like you move from stage to stage, and so the Gnostic Islam is a stage to get you to accept Gnosticism on its own, or Kabbalah on its own. Okay.
And how do we tie in the Muslim Brotherhood in all this? They're not so, they don't go back so far, I guess, and they're a fairly recent started group in that sense. Do you think that they've been used for this purpose then as well?
Yes, partly. So we should go back to the story of the Sabians.
Yes.
And because what happens is that there's this Johannite kind of legend basically takes over Freemasonry in the early 1800s. Sorry, not 1900s. And it basically becomes, it really takes over. It really becomes like the great mystery of Freemasonry at the time. This notion about the Templars getting their doctrines from these Eastern mystics, but we'll have to say Sabians. And so the order, of course, you know that the Illuminati was disbanded, but the order, according to Albert Pike, the order that takes over the leadership of the Illuminati at that point was the Asiatic Brethren.
Okay.
And the reason they're called Asiatic Brethren is because it's supposed to be referring to these Eastern mystics that the Templars had come into contact with. You follow me?
Yeah, with you.
So there's essentially supposed to be Sabian Mandaeans, or something like that, except that they're existing in Europe in the early 1800s. But the Asiatic Brethren was created by Moses Dobruschka. And Moses Dobruschka was the nephew of Jacob Frank.
Uh-huh.
Right. So if you read the books of Rabbi Antelman, who's a modern scholar, he was the one who, as far as I understand, who really pointed to this connection between Illuminati and the Shabbatean cult, and it really explains a lot. Because Shabbatei Zevi, I think we talked about this last time, but when he declared himself a Messiah in 1666, and exactly, and this rocked the Jewish world at the time. Apparently, as much as half of the world's Jewish population accepted him as the Messiah. So you're talking about, the Jews of North Africa, of the Middle East, of Europe, maybe as far as India and Afghanistan and places like that, had accepted this rumor of him being the Messiah. Except that when he was invited to come before the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan, the story goes that the Sultan gave an ultimatum that he either accepts Islam or death.
Yes.
And apparently he chose Islam, but he covertly converted to Islam.